Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. One of our goals for 2018 is to do more TV show reviews. We did a couple in 2017, but we definitely want to amp that up this year because we do watch a lot of TV in addition to movies. So we are kicking off 2018 with our first TV series review, and that is for Marvel's Runaways on Hulu.
Yeah, so the first season just completed. I think it's the full season. It was only 10 episodes. And so we actually just finished the finale. We're like, let's sit down, record our thoughts. And so here we are.
As always, this will be a spoiler review. We prefer to do TV show reviews in spoiler form. So if you have not seen the TV show and you are interested in staying spoiler-free, leave now or listen to spoilers. It's up to you.
Yeah, typically on our channel, all TV show reviews are spoiler-filled just because there's so much in a TV show.
It's hard to talk about 10 to 13 hours of something without talking about any details,
So here we are.
This was a storyline and characters that I was not familiar with in any way, shape, or form. It's not one of those comic kind of series or characters that you're familiar with just by the fringe of things without actually reading the comics, so I knew nothing going into this.
I knew a little bit. I've actually never read The Runaways.
But you knew a lot about the characters.
Yeah, but I knew some of the characters and kind of what they had going on for them. And I knew a little bit of the, original plot, which they really don't hit till the end of the first season. But I was going in pretty fresh.
When the trailers for this first came out, I was interested in seeing it. It looked intriguing. I will say it looked kind of similar to The Gifted, which we started watching and never finished. So that'll tell you all you need to know about that show.
This one turned out far better.
Yeah, so quick thoughts. We really liked it, but let's talk about why. First of all, the characters, the kids who are the actors and actresses in this show, so good.
I think they did a really good job casting all the kids. They're they look just visually so much like their comic counterparts.
Alex looks exactly
Oh my god, they are so close. I was pretty impressed by that, and just all of them actually do a really solid job. It was questionable at first.
Yeah, so it suffers from the whole pilot episode issue that a lot of TV shows have where you're and then you stick with it and you're okay. There's quite a bit, and this happens throughout the series a little bit, but it was pretty egregious in the first episode in my opinion. Just the teenagers speaking in a way that adults wrote them. Where you're
Which is true, and there are a couple times throughout the season where there's a moment where the kid will say something where you're kids don't say that anymore.
Yeah, or
don't. But they used to. It's very much the adult was this is how the kids.
So I was worried about that at first, coming off the first episode, but I will say that's not a running theme throughout the rest of the show. It touches on it every once in a while, but not enough for it to bother me.
I would say along the lines of characters, though, I was also very impressed by all the parent actors. 95% of which are actors I've never seen on screen before.
Also, this is a hella diverse show. I don't know if the comics were that way. Yes?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so you have an Asian family, you have a black family. I just think that's really good. As always, there could be more. But I thought it was pretty good for nowadays shows.
No, and like I said, I was really impressed by the parents because those are characters that you start out not caring about at all. In fact, they're the antagonists where you're I like them. But along the way, you start to kind of understand their motives, even if you disagree with them or they're still being cowardly or wrong. I thought they did it pretty well on that show, better than a lot of shows do, where it's these are the antagonists' motives and the things they want and their goals, and a lot of those make sense. You're oh, I kind of agree with your goal.
I will also say the character development in the show is pretty darn good. I will say it's one of those shows that you got to get past the first couple episodes. Not that they're bad episodes, but some of the characters are a little two-dimensional at first, or they're kind of caricatures of themselves. I complained about that after the first episode. I was all of them are caricatures of what you would think these people are. But they get a lot better as you go, and you learn a lot more about their characters. They become very multi-dimensional characters. There were quite a few characters at the beginning, especially the kids, where I was oh, you're the jock. Oh, you're the popular girl. Oh, you're the feminist chick. Just those, stereotypes, but that's totally not what they are by the end of it. There were also relationships that you thought were going to go in one direction at the beginning and went in a completely opposite direction towards the end, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, and we'll get to those. I also, as far as the characters go, this show is rewarding to watch. Yes. Which I was impressed by. So, every episode you watch, you get a little bit more and more depth to each of the characters. Even when you feel you kind of have a character figured out, they tend to give you at least a couple things that make that more special or feel cooler. You get to know that character better on a deeper level. And so it's a very rewarding show to watch from characters and other areas too, which I think we'll get to in a little bit. So in the comics, what is supposed to happen is all the kids find out that their parents are supervillains and they run away. And then eventually come back to defeat them and do other things, but like they run away. And for this first season of television, they don't run away.
Yeah, they actually described like these different circumstances as being runaways, like these certain kids. So you have if you've watched the show, maybe you stuck around because you didn't watch it, I don't know, but a little bit backstory is that there's kind of this like cult church situation thing going on, and they're pulling people from their parish who have no family ties, they're all alone, and sacrificing them to let Jonah live. And they call those people runaways. Like, they're the ones who are labeled runaways. So I was like, wait a second. Are the kids who are the main characters not runaways? He was like, they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, especially in that episode, they did specifically, like, they almost did the, like, we're going to focus on this and mention it, like, 3 times.
Title means.
Runaways. Oh, those kids who are sacrificed, runaways.
Yeah.
And, like, so I was like, oh, is that why they're calling it that? But I know in the comics they're supposed to run away.
Which was pretty lame, I will admit, but you get to the finale and they actually run away. So I will say the first season was a very big setup, but it was a good setup. Like, I'm very excited for season 2 because of this. But yeah, the beginning where they defined runaways as something different was strange.
I think this season, depending on how the show continues, will end up being a really good, like, prologue season. It is season 1, but I feel like next season's like the real season 1.
It's kind of like Preacher. If you watch the show Preacher, from what I understand of the comics, like the first season was really not where the comics start. It's like before the comics start to get you to where the comics start. Similar to that, we think.
Yeah, and so with them finally actually getting all their powers, assorted things figured out, and then they finally run away in the final episode, that you start to go, oh, well, next season is when things are going to happen. But I think this season was needed because it gives you so much background on all the characters and getting to know their situations, their families, their home life. It makes them leaving that mean more, I think, by the end.
So you mentioned powers. Let's talk about that and cheesy potential and if it meant that or not. So with a lot of superhero shows, especially TV shows, the whole like superhero aspect or powers, I feel like can kind of be pretty cheesy or just like not land right. I don't think that's the case with this show. I think there are a couple moments here and there, but overall I think it was pretty well done. They explain why people have certain abilities or whatever pretty well. The only one they don't really explain is Alex, but I'm wondering if we'll get more of that in season 2.
Well, I know that in the comics, Alex is just supposed to be a genius, but they have not really portrayed him as a genius at all.
They've mentioned some things where, like, he's been able to get into places where he shouldn't have been able to get to, like, internet or computer-wise, and so they've, like, touched on it but didn't clearly define. Chase has the Fistigons, and I think that they explained, like, how he gets those pretty well, and I actually really like that he was involved and the head leader of making those, and they weren't just something inherited by his dad.
Overall, they've really diversified the power set, which is cool, and I know they're the same as in the comics, but I like that Gert's power is that she has a velociraptor.
I thought that was going to be really stupid at first because I didn't know that there was a velociraptor involved until Steven told me about it while we were watching the first episode, and I was like, what? I thought it was going to be super stupid. It was very endearing. I really like it. Gert and Old Lace forever.
And Molly, who in the comics is a mutant, but because they didn't own Fox yet, as of making this show, they didn't call her a mutant or anything like that. She's just strong for whatever reason. It's a fun power, and it's been enjoyable. It's very funny that her power, every time she uses her super strength, she gets really hungry and sleepy. It's very similar to, like, if you've read the Aragon series, where, like, magic that you do, it drains you equally to what, like, you physically doing that would have caused. I really like the real-world ramifications of that, so it's not just, like, unending power. Yeah, she's not just like, I'm strong all the time. She's like, I can use this when I want to. Yes, it's kind of funny, because she's, like, the youngest of the group, and she's very sweet, so she gets all badass and really cool, and then she's like, I'm sleepy. And it's just, I don't know, it's, like, perfect for her character. And I know that Nico in the comics is supposed to be like a witch. Fun. Like, she's supposed to, like, be able to do stuff, not just have that staff, I think.
They left a lot of room for them to grow into their abilities or special stuff. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and I definitely think that they're going to grow into that, especially with Carolina, whose powers we still don't quite understand what she is, or she just glows, but she's clearly the most powerful one in the group.
Carolina Carolina, I did not care for at the beginning, and by the end of it, I love her so much. She is great.
Well, that's because at the beginning she was very much a bright and shiny character. Like I said earlier, I think one of the best parts of this show is how rewarding it is, and the plot is that way too. You very much start in the show really not having any idea what's going on, and I do like that this show really doesn't treat its audience like they're stupid.
No, but they also draw things out long enough to keep your interest. Like we said, this was very much a setup season, and so what you find out at the end, like, there's a climax at the end, but it's not like oh, that's season done and on to a new thing. Like, you're just getting started at the end of this season.
And I feel like a lot of shows, like, dramatically try to put those questions in your face, like, who is that? Who's the killer? What is this? Whereas this show's very much like, it gives you details and explains things, but leaves some things just unsaid or unexplained, so then you're like, oh, but what is that guy's power set? Who are they? Like, what are they doing? Like, what's the thing in the ground that you revealed in the last episode? So
it makes you very invested as an audience member, and not like, oh, I'm tired of these questions that you're not answering, or like that you're shoving in my face but never giving me any details of. Like, Lost did that a lot. So I agree. I hadn't even thought about that, but I completely agree. I think that's a big reason why I love this season so much.
Yeah, they never rubbed your nose in the fact that you didn't know something. It's more just like they hadn't mentioned it yet because, like normal characters, they're not going to go have a conversation about the one thing the viewer hasn't figured out yet to let them know that that's what's happening for the sake of drama. And I felt like this show did not force the drama, which I really appreciated.
We've talked a lot about the characters and them as individuals, but let's talk about how they merge together and how they work as a team, and also in romance situations, which, am I turning into a romance person? I used to hate romance shit, and now I feel like every review we've talked about, I'm like, I love this romance. I don't know what's happening, but...
Stereotypes, hon.
I don't know. But I loved the relationships in this. I also like the friendships in this. Like, they all mesh together really well. At first, like, there's some tension between certain characters, and they're all kind of in different places. But by the end of it, I think they're very much a team, and it came across very naturally across the season.
Yeah, I think this is definitely an example of when you take your time with characters and allow them to grow together, it's so much more fluid than if you just, like, try to force them and have them do, like, a couple quips or arguments, but then they're, like, super close, which I think happens, like, in the big blockbuster movies sometimes.
Yeah, where you just throw a team together. I think it helped that this group of people, they were friends when they were younger, and then one of the family members of one of them died, and so they kind of broke up and distanced because of that, but then they come back together. So you still have those old ties, so you don't have to start from scratch, but at the same time, there's still a lot of, like, pain and stuff that's gone along in between that, so it made it for very rich character arcs.
That being said, we are ship people, and we had some ships, but they surprised me because this show does an excellent job of introducing these romances, and you're like, I really don't feel the chemistry. I feel like this is rough, and it's almost like they knew that that's what they were trying to do, which is probably what they were trying to do, because then they go, ha ha ha, those aren't the actual real romances. Both of those are going to fall apart.
Yeah. So first you have Chase and Carolina because they're the popular kids and, like, the classically pretty ones, so obviously they're going to be together. But there was, like, no warmth between them. I also didn't like Chase at first, and he grew on me so much. And then you had Nico and Alex, who I also, like, they came across as, like, besties. They came across more like siblings than, like, romance. And I know Alex had, like, this big old crush on Nico, but it just didn't, like, translate as, like, a potential relationship. So those were the two you got introduced to, and then Gert's fangirling over Chase. And, like, but that felt weird, too, at the beginning. So all these things, I was like, you're introducing all these things, and I don't like any of them.
I think the coolest part was that, at a certain point, for Carolina's romance, who she ends up getting with Nico, and the way they introduce that is she's just not interested in Chase, and you don't know why you think she's just not interested. And then there's literally, like, a 4-second scene where they don't explain it, they don't say anything, she just looks at Nico for a second.
And it's just a look. But it's not like one of those, like, zoom in dramatically, like,
no,
long
it was just
shots.
like she stopped talking, and so the camera was still on her face, and it just showed her kind of, like, look over to where Nico was.
And we're like, oh.
And just, like, give her, like, the look for a second, and we're like, wait a minute.
But then they didn't address it for a few more episodes. Like, it just went away. So it wasn't a, like, we're going to tease this, and it's going to be the first scene in the next episode. Like, they did so good with the development naturally.
And they delivered. I was not super feeling the Gert and Chase, but when they actually got together, I really liked it. And I was like, it was cute. Like, it was good.
I also really like that they had two teenage characters who consensually had sex, and they didn't make a big deal out of it. Like, oh my god, I lost my virginity, which I'm pretty sure neither of them did. But like anything like that, I feel like that's a typical high school romance thing, and I like that that wasn't like the thing they focused on. They more focused on the interpersonal part of it rather than like the taboo of sex thing.
It's so easy during a show that features like teenage aged people to get so caught up in these romance arcs and to use them as like almost like plot. Like a good example is sometimes like CW shows especially.
They're
like
awful about
DCW shows, like the superhero shows get caught up in these weird romance arcs where like they're more of a focus than like them being superheroes, and it's really odd and jarring, and I appreciate that this show has the romance because it's a normal part of stories where all these characters are, you know, combining and talking and growing together, but it feels very natural and not forced, and it doesn't feel like it's eclipsing what's actually happening.
So to sum up all of the character things that we've talked about, all of it is natural. Like, it just flows.
It works.
It does work. It was really well written for that. Like you said, besides the, like, weird dialogue every once in a while, it was pretty well written. We've talked a lot about the teenage characters, and to be fair, they are the main characters, but we haven't talked very much about the villain, and honestly, that's because their relationships with each other is way more of a focus this season. Like, I think the villain aspect of it, like we said, is a very big setup in this season, so I think season 2 is going to focus on that a lot more, because Jonah wasn't even in the first, like, half of the season.
That's true.
Like, he's there, but he's not. So, you don't really know anything about him. So, he doesn't really feel like this dramatic big bad quite yet. Like, you started to get there with the finale, because he got all glowy and whatnot, and started shooting,
He's
like,
clearly
beams of
powerful,
light.
yeah.
Right, but besides that, we don't really know his motivations, we don't know what he's trying to do, we don't know why he's been manipulating these people for 15 years. Like, there's just not a whole lot we know, so I'm not as invested in his storyline as I am with the kids.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. I will say the guy who plays him does a fantastic villain. And
yeah, if you've ever watched Charmed, he's great.
As soon as we saw him, we're he's actually the big bad.
Yeah.
Because you just know, because, yeah, in Charmed, and he doesn't play a bad guy in Nip Tuck, which is like his big FX show, but he exudes, like, I am scummy and evil, and just like his facial expression, the way he talks to people, he does a really good job with it. He's made to play villains, and I enjoyed it.
Overall, I think it's very clear that we really enjoyed this show. I don't know if it's like the best I've seen lately, but it's something fresh in a superhero saturated TV show market, so I really enjoyed that. I really recommend you guys check it out. If you don't have Hulu, find another way to grab it. Yeah,
I feel like I really did not go into this show with very high expectations at all, but the good writing of the characters and how they develop, and the fact that this show is willing to take its time really sets it apart from, like you said, a lot of different superhero shows. And so by the end of it, like, I feel like I end up liking that show more than I should have, is like my feeling. I'm like,
more than you expected.
Yeah, whereas because I didn't expect that, and I don't feel like the show is necessarily extraordinary, but it just did everything really well. And so by the end I was like, wow, I actually really liked it.
It's a pretty big testament that we started watching this week to week, which our TV show watching habits is we tend to like to binge shows better. So if it's something like a Netflix show that drops all at once, yeah, we'll watch it in the first weekend. But shows that only come out on a weekly basis, we tend to kind of let them like stack up, and then we'll watch a whole bunch of them at once. And we definitely don't end them right around the time that they're actually ending like their airtime. So it says a lot for us personally that we started watching this week to week, I think after just the first episode. Like,
yeah,
we watched this
every
every single
episode
week.
or two, and then we hopped on, yeah, so. But as always, guys, what did you guys think of the first season of Runaways? I know that opinions are always different. We want to know what you guys thought of the show, or if you haven't seen it and you decided to watch this whole video. I know we didn't, like, do actually that many spoilers, but I feel like we gave quite a bit away.
Also, if you have other TV shows that are coming out this year that you are interested in having us review, let us know, and we might put them on our watch list.
Yeah, because we have our own list, but you might get us to try something out that we might not. Let us know down in the comments below. We do a lot of different videos on the channel, reviews, different sort of fun stuff. So if you guys want to check some of those out, you can click right over there, and remember to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.